Ip Man was born on October 1, 1893, in Foshan, Guangdong Province, during the final breaths of an empire that had ruled China for over 200 years. The Qing dynasty was still in power, but it was already dying. Foreign powers carved China into spheres of influence. Opium had weakened generations. Corruption rotted the imperial court from within. Rebellions rose and fell like waves, each leaving scars deeper than the last. Most ordinary citizens did not speak of collapse. They felt it, in empty bowls and rising taxes, in fear passed quietly from parent to child. Foshan, however, stood apart. It was a city where tradition still held its ground, a place famous across southern China for martial arts, lion dancing, opera, and craftsmanship. In Foshan, Kung Fu was not sport. It was inheritance, it was protection. It was identity. Ip Man was born into a family of privilege. His father was a wealthy landlord respected in the community. The Ip household was large, orderly, and disciplined. Unlike many future martial artists shaped by hunger and desperation, Ip Man grew up surrounded by stability. He received formal education, wore clean clothes, and knew comfort from an early age. But Foshan had a way of shaping even the comfortable. At 6 years old, Ip Man was introduced to Wing Chun, not as a hobby but as a discipline. His teacher was Chan Washun, a renowned master known as Money Changer Hua, a man feared for his skill and respected for his severity. Chan was already old and ill when Ip Man became his student. He did not teach gently. Training took place behind closed doors, away from spectators. There were no ranks, no uniforms. No ceremonies, only structure, balance, and repetition. Movements were drilled until they became instinct. Mistakes were corrected without explanation. Pain was part of learning. Wing Chun was unlike other martial arts Ip Man saw in Foshan. It was not designed for wide stances or dramatic movements. It focused on the center line, the shortest path between two bodies. It favored timing over strength, precision over power, calm over aggression. Chan Washun taught that real fights did not allow for mistakes. One wrong movement could end a life. Young Ip Man learned to stand still under pressure, to absorb correction without complaint, to strike without emotion. These lessons shaped not just his body, but his temperament. When Chan Washun died, Ip Man did not stop training. He continued under senior students, particularly Ng Chung Sok, refining what he had learned. Yet even as his skill grew, something remained incomplete. Technique alone could not answer deeper questions about timing, intent, and control. As Ip Man entered his teenage years, Foshan buzzed with tension. China was changing faster than tradition could keep up. Rumors of revolution spread. Foreign soldiers marched in nearby cities. The empire that once felt eternal now felt fragile. Ip Man watched all of this quietly. He did not fight in the streets. He did not boast of his skill. He did not seek validation. Those who observed him noticed something unusual, a calm far beyond his age. By 15, Ip Man was already formidable. But more importantly, he was disciplined. He understood that power revealed too early is often power wasted. The boy growing up in a dying empire was learning a lesson that would define his entire life. Strength does not announce itself. And history was preparing to test that belief. Mastery does not arrive with noise. It arrives quietly, often disguised as defeat. When Ip Man left Foshan for Hong Kong, he carried confidence shaped by years of disciplined training. In his hometown, his Wing Chun was already respected. Among local fighters, few could challenge him. By every visible measure, he was already successful. Hong Kong changed that illusion. The city was louder, faster, and more dangerous than Foshan. British rule had turned it into a crossroads of cultures, trade, and conflict. Sailors, soldiers, merchants, and fighters from every background passed through its streets. Strength here was tested, not assumed. Ip Man enrolled at St. Stephen's College, but education was not the only lesson waiting for him. In Hong Kong, martial artists did not announce themselves with banners or schools. True skill often hid behind ordinary appearances, and it was in this environment that Ip Man encountered a man who would redefine his life. Lung Bik was old. He did not look powerful. He did not seek students. He lived quietly, almost invisibly, among people who had no idea who he was. To most, he appeared insignificant. What Ip Man did not know was that Leung Bik was the son of Leung Jan, the most revered Wing Chun grandmaster of the previous generation, known across southern China as the King of Wing Chun. Their meeting was unremarkable. There was no ceremony, no formal introduction, only a casual exchange that led to a test of skill. And in that test, Ip Man was dismantled. Every technique he attempted failed. Every opening he sought disappeared. Leung Bik did not attack aggressively. He neutralized effortlessly. His movements were minimal, precise, and calm. It felt less like fighting a man and more like colliding with structure itself. Ip Man had never experienced anything like it. This was not superiority through strength. This was superiority through understanding. For a brief moment, pride rose, then it collapsed. Instead of resentment, Ip Man felt clarity. He bowed and asked to be taught. Leung Bik accepted, not with enthusiasm, but with caution. He did not teach techniques first. He corrected posture, he adjusted angles. He spoke about timing, distance, and sensitivity, concepts that could not be forced, only absorbed. Under Leung Bik, Wing Chun became something deeper. It was no longer about winning exchanges. It was about controlling space, about listening with the body, about conserving energy until the exact moment it was needed. Leung Bik emphasized economy of motion, the idea that the shortest path is not just faster but safer, that calmness defeats aggression, that control defeats chaos. But his greatest lesson had nothing to do with fighting. He taught Ip Man humility. True mastery, Leung Bik said, should never chase recognition. The moment skill seeks applause, it begins to decay. A master survives without witnesses. These lessons cut deeper than any strike. They reshaped Ip Man's character permanently. The confidence he carried from Foshan was refined, not destroyed. Ego was replaced with patience, speed with timing, power with restraint. When Ip Man eventually left Hong Kong, he did not leave with certificates, titles, or stories to tell. He left with silence. And that silence would become his greatest strength, because when he returned to China, he carried something no one else could see: a complete understanding. Hong Kong did more than sharpen Ip Man's fists, it sharpened his mind. While his training under Leung Bik refined his understanding of Wing Chun, his years at St. Stephen's College reshaped how he saw the world and himself. The school stood as a symbol of modernity. English was spoken in the halls. Western literature filled the classrooms. Ideas were debated openly, not inherited blindly. For a young man raised in tradition, this environment was unsettling and transformative. Ip Man studied mathematics, literature, and philosophy. He learned to analyze problems rather than react to them. He learned that intelligence was not weakness, and that restraint could be a form of strength. This dual education, martial and intellectual, made him different from other fighters of his generation. While many martial artists measured themselves by reputation and challenge matches, Ip Man grew increasingly reserved. He understood that skill revealed too often loses its edge. He avoided unnecessary conflict, not from fear but from clarity. Yet his ability did not go unnoticed. Among students and acquaintances, quiet tests of skill occurred. Those who challenged him expected aggression. What they encountered instead was control. Movements were small, timing was precise. Resistance dissolved before it could escalate. There was no humiliation, only realization. Win or lose, Ip Man treated every exchange the same way, calmly, without pride or resentment. This earned him something more valuable than fame: respect. During these years, China itself was breaking apart. In 1911, revolution ended over 2,000 years of imperial rule. The Qing dynasty collapsed and the Republic of China was born into chaos. Power fractured between warlords. Ideals clashed with reality. The future was uncertain. From Hong Kong, Ip Man watched these changes with measured distance. He understood something many did not. The old world would not survive unchanged. Tradition alone was not enough. Adaptation was inevitable. This realization quietly prepared him for choices he would later make. Choices that would anger traditionalists, but save Wing Chun from extinction. By the time Ip Man completed his studies, he was no longer simply a practitioner of martial arts. He was a man of balance, strength and intellect, tradition and adaptability, silence and precision. In 1917, Ip Man returned to Foshan. He did not return seeking recognition. He returned prepared to live quietly, prepared to serve, prepared to remain unseen. He had no idea that history would soon drag him into the spotlight, against his will. Ip Man returned to Foshan in 1917 as a young man who had seen both the old ways and the possibilities of a changing world. He carried with him knowledge that few in his hometown could match, yet he did not announce himself. He did not seek fame. He did not open a school. He lived quietly, almost invisibly, but his presence carried weight. He joined the local police force, a position of responsibility in a city that often teetered on the edge of chaos. Foshan, though steeped in tradition, was not free from disorder. Gangs roamed the streets, disputes erupted in alleys, and corruption sometimes undermined justice. Ip Man's skill was unmatched, yet he used it sparingly. Force was a tool, not a show. He de-escalated when possible, intervened decisively when necessary, and punished only with purpose. To those who encountered him in conflict, he was terrifying not for aggression but for efficiency. Every movement was deliberate, every strike precise. This was the essence of Wing Chun as he understood it: efficiency, control, and respect for life. At home, his life appeared ordinary. He married Chung Wing Sing, and together they raised a family grounded in discipline and moral education. Their home reflected order, patience, and quiet dignity. Ip Man's children learned lessons of character more than combat: responsibility, integrity, and respect. Evenings were spent refining techniques alone or with close friends. Sparring was private, teaching was selective. For Ip Man, Wing Chun was not a business. It was a responsibility, a philosophy, and a discipline to be preserved, not exploited. Yet even without public instruction, stories of his skill spread. Within Foshan's martial arts circles, whispers of Ip Man circulated. Those bold enough to test him learned quickly. He did not seek to dominate. He revealed the truth of their own limitations. By the mid-1930s, Ip Man had achieved what few masters could claim. He had a respected position in the community, a stable, loving family, a quiet reputation built on substance rather than spectacle. He had mastered his art without turning it into a spectacle, and in doing so, he had mastered himself. But history, as always, has a way of testing even the most disciplined lives. In the distance, the drums of war were growing louder. The world Ip Man had built, stable, measured, and predictable, was about to be swallowed by chaos. And he would soon learn that skill, discipline, and quiet wisdom were not always enough to protect those he loved. In 1937, the world around Foshan changed overnight. The Japanese invasion of China swept through the south like a relentless storm. Cities burned, families fled. The streets of Foshan, once familiar and disciplined, were now filled with fear, uncertainty, and violence. The empire that had lingered in memory was gone, replaced by the harsh reality of occupation. Ip Man's life, which had been stable for decades, was suddenly under siege. The Japanese confiscated property, seized businesses, and restricted movement. Wealth, status, and privilege, the very foundations of his family's comfort, were stripped away. Food became scarce, prices soared. Every day was a test of survival, every meal a victory. The occupation offered him a cruel choice. The Japanese sought local martial artists to teach them Wing Chun, to refine their soldiers' skills. They promised food, protection, and even position for compliance. For many, acceptance meant survival. For Ip Man, it meant betrayal. Betrayal of self, family, and the very principles he had spent decades cultivating. He refused. He chose hunger over humiliation, dignity over comfort, integrity over ease. The years that followed tested him more than any sparring partner or master had ever done. Meals were meager, shelter was uncertain, illness lurked in every corner. Yet he endured, not through brute strength, but through discipline, patience, and unshakable moral resolve. Witnesses would later describe him walking the streets of Foshan during the occupation, gaunt, quiet, and dignified. The master who once commanded respect through skill alone now commanded respect through courage and principle. He did not fight to dominate. He fought to preserve his soul. Wing Chun, which had always been a private pursuit, became a lifeline of control. It was no longer about defeating opponents. It was about maintaining composure, about surviving without surrendering to fear, hunger, or despair. The Japanese may have conquered the city, but they could not conquer Ip Man's spirit. By the end of the war in 1945, Foshan had been devastated. Families were scattered. Businesses were ruined. Society had fractured, leaving chaos in its wake. Ip Man emerged not as a man untouched by war. He had lost comfort, wealth, and security, but as a man whose principles had been tested and proven unbreakable. Hunger had humbled him, loss had sharpened him, pride had preserved him. And though the world around him had crumbled, one thing remained unshaken: the quiet strength of a master who understood that true victory is not measured by trophies, but by character. The guns fell silent in 1945, and for most, peace meant relief. For Ip Man, it revealed the full weight of what had been lost. Foshan was a city scarred by war. Buildings lay in ruins, businesses were destroyed, and the social order had crumbled. Money meant nothing, status meant nothing, survival meant everything. Ip Man's family had once lived comfortably. Their home had been secure. Their life structured, now it was gone. His properties were seized or ruined. His savings were worthless. His position in the police force no longer existed in the post-war chaos. The comfortable life he had known for decades had vanished like smoke in the wind. But the hardest loss was personal. Political instability had grown. The civil war between nationalists and communists tore China apart. Families were separated, friends vanished, and loyalties were questioned at every turn. Ip Man made a decision that would weigh on him for the rest of his life. He left Foshan for Hong Kong. He left as a refugee, not as a master, not as a celebrated teacher, not even as a man of status. He left with only his knowledge, his skill, and the hope that he could rebuild. In Hong Kong, he was nobody. The man who had commanded respect through discipline and mastery now relied on friends for shelter. Meals were meager, rooms were cramped. Stability was a memory, fading with every day. Hunger returned, heavier and more humiliating than he remembered. This was a man who had survived Japanese occupation, famine, and moral trials. Yet now he faced an enemy he had never faced before: obscurity. For the first time in his life, Ip Man struggled with more than physical challenges. Loneliness gnawed at him, exhaustion clouded his mind. The stress of survival brought temptations he had never faced, including opium, a common escape for men crushed by loss and displacement. Even as he battled these pressures, he remained a man of principle. He would not compromise his values. But survival required adaptation. To rebuild, he had to teach. He opened the first small Wing Chun classes, not for fame, not for glory, but because it was the only way to live. The master who had once lived in comfort now taught in humble rooms, his audience small, his reward uncertain. Every lesson was a struggle, every student a reminder of how far he had fallen and how far he could rise again. From these trials, Ip Man's character was forged anew. Loss had stripped away everything superficial. What remained was discipline, integrity, and the essence of a true master. By 1949, Ip Man had begun planting the seeds of what would become the modern Wing Chun movement. The man who had lost everything was preparing to build a legacy that would endure far beyond his lifetime. By the early 1950s, Ip Man had settled in Hong Kong, a city teeming with opportunity, chaos, and change. He was a man who had survived empires falling, famine, war, and exile. Now he faced a different challenge: survival through teaching. With nothing but his skill, reputation among a few local friends, and the lessons of decades, Ip Man began opening small Wing Chun classes. His first students were neighbors, friends, and a few martial artists seeking instruction. They came with curiosity but left with discipline, respect, and humility. Unlike the crowded public schools of the mainland, Ip Man's teaching was private and rigorous. Each student was scrutinized, every movement corrected, nothing wasted. His philosophy was clear. Wing Chun was not a sport. It was not a performance. It was a method for survival, a discipline for the mind as much as the body. In these humble classrooms, Ip Man began shaping what would later be called modern Wing Chun.
He emphasized simplicity, eliminating unnecessary movements.
Economy of motion. Every strike and block serving a purpose. Her sensitivity. Learning to read an opponent's intent before it manifested. A controlling on discipline over power, patience over aggression. Yet teaching was not easy. Hong Kong was filled with masters of many schools, each protective of their lineage. Some criticized Ip Man for teaching openly, seeing it as a violation of tradition. They whispered that Wing Chun was being diluted. Some openly challenged him, testing his skills in the streets. Ip Man responded as always, quietly, precisely, without ego. Every test he faced reinforced not his strength but his philosophy. Mastery is measured by restraint, not spectacle. Word of his skill began to spread. Slowly, quietly, people came from farther away. Small rooms became classrooms. Students carried his techniques back to their own neighborhoods. Wing Chun was no longer just a tradition in Foshan. It was beginning to survive and to adapt in a new era. During this period, Ip Man also began forming relationships that would shape the future of martial arts forever. One of these students would later become a world-renowned figure, bridging Eastern martial arts and Western culture. But for now, they were just a young boy, curious, eager, and unaware of the revolution in training that awaited him. By the late 1950s, Ip Man was no longer merely surviving. He was creating a legacy, from refugee to teacher, from private master to mentor of future masters, from tradition bound to the mainland to the evolution of Wing Chun in Hong Kong. This decade, born from loss and necessity, became the crucible in which Ip Man transformed Wing Chun into a living art, ready to spread beyond borders, beyond generations, and beyond his own lifetime. Every lesson taught, every principle shared, every student molded. This was the quiet forging of a legend. Hong Kong in the mid-1950s was a city of movement. Boats carrying refugees arrived daily. Streets teemed with energy, ambition, and sometimes violence. Ip Man's small Wing Chun school was growing quietly. Word of mouth had brought him students from beyond his neighborhood. Men and boys eager to learn the art of efficiency, control, and survival. Among them, one young boy would change history. Bruce Lee was only a teenager when he first stepped into Ip Man's classroom. He was charismatic, quick-witted, and full of restless energy. He was also impatient, eager to master skill faster than any teacher would allow. From the first session, it was clear that this boy was different. His movements were fast but unrefined. His strikes carried speed but little structure. And yet, beneath the impulsiveness, there was curiosity, intelligence, and an instinct that few had ever seen. Ip Man, who had spent decades teaching discipline and restraint, faced a new challenge. Bruce Lee tested boundaries, asked questions others would never dare, and sometimes challenged authority. But Ip Man did not punish him. He guided him, corrected him, and, when necessary, restrained him. The relationship between master and student was more than teacher and pupil. It was philosophical. Ip Man emphasized control, economy of motion, and defense over aggression. He taught that skill without ethics is dangerous, and strength without patience is wasted. Bruce Lee brought energy, innovation, and a desire to adapt martial arts to new circumstances. He questioned, experimented, and challenged traditions. For Ip Man, teaching Bruce Lee was a test, not of skill, but of philosophy. Could he instill discipline without quashing curiosity? Could he pass tradition without hindering evolution? The answer came slowly but surely. Bruce Lee absorbed Wing Chun's core principles. Ip Man's calm, precise, and controlled method began to resonate within the boy. At the same time, Lee's questions and experiments subtly pushed Ip Man to explain, articulate, and refine his own teaching. It was a partnership without equal. In those small Hong Kong classrooms, the seeds of global martial arts influence were sown. Bruce Lee would carry Wing Chun, and the lessons learned from Ip Man far beyond Hong Kong's shores. The principles of control, precision, and economy of motion would be transformed, adapted, and eventually introduced to the world. Yet for Ip Man, it was never about fame. He taught because it was necessary, because survival demanded it, because tradition demanded it. And in guiding Bruce Lee, he unknowingly became a bridge between East and West, tradition and innovation, secrecy and global legacy. By the end of the 1950s, Ip Man's school had established itself as more than a place to learn martial arts. It was a forge, it was a laboratory. It was where Wing Chun was reborn, disciplined, alive, and ready to survive beyond China. Ip Man, the quiet master, had begun to leave a mark that no classroom could contain. The 1960s in Hong Kong were a period of change. Cities grew, industries flourished, and traditions collided with modern life. Amidst this, Ip Man remained steadfast, a master living quietly, teaching diligently, and observing the world with calm eyes. By now, his school had produced dozens of students. Many went on to teach, spread Wing Chun, and refine techniques. Yet Ip Man remained humble. He never sought fame. He never attended competitions. He never advertised his skills. His reputation was earned quietly through precision, discipline, and integrity. Even in his later years, he continued to train daily. Early mornings were for forms and footwork. Evenings were for correcting students and refining techniques. Age had slowed his body, but his mind and reflexes remained sharp. His strikes retained the economy, precision, and fluidity that had defined him for decades. Ip Man's influence extended quietly but profoundly. He shaped a generation of martial artists who would carry Wing Chun beyond Foshan, beyond Hong Kong, and eventually across the globe. Every student, every demonstration, Every correction carried the philosophy that had guided him his entire life. Strength tempered by restraint, skill guided by morality, and mastery that requires patience, humility, and discipline. Perhaps no influence was more profound than his impact on Bruce Lee. Through Lee, Ip Man's teachings would merge with new ideas, martial arts philosophy, and global cinema. Through Lee, Wing Chun became a bridge between East and West, tradition and innovation, the private art of the master and the public spectacle of the screen. Yet for Ip Man, fame was never the goal. He measured life not in accolades or recognition, but in character. In teaching, he left a blueprint for integrity and mastery. In living quietly, he demonstrated that the greatest victories often go unseen. In 1972, Ip Man passed away peacefully in his home in Hong Kong. He left behind a family, a school, and a legacy that would ripple far beyond his lifetime. His death marked the end of an era, but the seeds he had planted continued to grow. Today, Wing Chun thrives worldwide. Films, documentaries, and biographies honor his life. Students across continents practice the art he refined, combining discipline with freedom, structure with innovation, principles Ip Man lived and taught. Yet the true legacy of Ip Man is more than techniques or films. It is in the quiet mastery he embodied. It is in the strength of character he demonstrated in adversity. It is in the understanding that the greatest power lies not in dominance but in restraint. Ip Man was not a man of spectacle. He was a man of principle, a quiet giant whose life taught that mastery is forged not in fame but in patience, not in wealth but in discipline, not in victory but in integrity. And that is why, decades later, the name Ip Man still resonates, not as a legend of fights won or battles fought, but as a symbol of enduring strength, humility, and honor. The master is gone, the legacy is eternal,